Welcome, everyone. I'm Ann Mannering, Director of the University of Oregon Online Masters in Psychology program. I'm delighted to be here today with Charleen Justice. Charleen is the Executive Manager to Dr. Rick Doblin, who is the founder and president of the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, also known as MAPS. Charleen is a full-time master's student here at the University of Oregon. She is the recipient of the Ford Restart Scholarship and the Diversity Excellence Scholarship, and she will be graduating soon with a Master of Science. Charleen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited for our conversation.
Me too.
Okay, so I'd like to start by asking you to share a bit about your background and the origin of your connection with MAPS. What brought you to this work and to MAPS specifically?
Yeah, so I was raised here in Oregon, born and raised here in Oregon on Klamath Tribes land by outlaws with addictions. So drugs have always been part of my life. But in 2011, I started learning about the beneficial uses in certain contexts and trying to read the scientific papers that were coming out. They'd been coming out for longer than that, but after I was made aware of them. And then in 2012, my friend Rawa sent me the MAPS website, and he said that he thought I would appreciate it, which I did. And I kept trying to read these research papers, but I couldn't understand them. And so in 2013, 10 years after I graduated from high school, I decided to start at Lane Community College and study science, education, and human services. So I wanted to be able to understand what I was reading, help teach it to others, and then help people with the findings. So I did a couple classes at Lane, and then I started looking for a degree that I could pursue that would help me. And I went to the University of Oregon website, and I found the Planning, Public Policy, and Management degree, or 3PM. And it was all about helping communities and doing great work, and I was like, ooh, I like this. And so I looked up public policy and drug policy careers, and I saw Rick Doblin on there, and I knew of Rick because he founded MAPS in '86, and I had loved what he did with MAPS, but I had no idea that he had gone and got a PhD in public policy from Harvard. And I had gotten diagnosed with PTSD right around that time, and MAPS studies treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder. And so it was sort of a spiritual experience for me and my final deciding factor in pursuing that degree. So I started here at the UO in 2016, and shortly after I started here, I restarted the chapter of Students for Sensible Drug Policy, and I started volunteering for MAPS under them. And 2 weeks after I graduated, I was offered a job as a community engagement assistant. And then after my first 80 hours, I got promoted to be Rick's executive assistant. And now it's been 3.5 years, and I'm his manager.
That's fantastic. That may be the fastest promotion I've ever heard of in history. Thank you for sharing more about that. Could you share maybe what you found most exciting or surprising about the work you've been involved in through MAPS?
Yeah, so the most exciting thing is we just finished our second phase 3 trial of MDMA-assisted therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder. We got our results last month, and this has been, in April, it'll be 37 years that Rick has been working on this. So it's really exciting, and they confirmed our first phase 3 trial results, where 88% of the participants saw a clinically meaningful reduction in symptoms, and 67% of those no longer qualified for a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. And of those participants, more than a third had PTSD for more than 20 years. So this is a really big deal.
That's wonderful. Those numbers are astounding. That's very impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, a related question. Your role in advocacy for psychedelic-assisted therapy has accelerated recently, including national and international travel. Could you share a bit about the connections that you're building or that you're hoping to build?
Yeah, super exciting. So Rick and I went to Iceland last month with some of the top researchers and scientists in the world for their very first Psychedelics as Medicine conference. and the organizer, Sarah, and her team did a phenomenal job. They got representatives from law enforcement, prisons and jails, mental health care, all of their primary systems had representatives there to learn about the latest science and research coming out. And we actually spoke with 11 representatives of Parliament, so like Minister of Justice, Minister of Health, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and discussed the possibility of bringing MDMA-assisted therapy to Iceland, assuming that it gets approved next year. We're filing our new drug application this year, and we're hoping to have approval next year.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, and then last 2 weeks ago, we actually also went to Miami for another conference, and we met with the Honorable Steve Leifman there, and he actually formed the 11th Circuit Court Criminal Mental Health Program in the year 2000. Super impressive. So if people get brought in from committing a crime but they haven't been sentenced, they'll get a mental health screening. So he was realizing that most of the people who were in the jails and prisons had serious mental health issues, substance use disorder, these types of things, and so they have a screening for them, and if they're eligible, they go into a diversion program. And the recidivism rates were in the 70s to 80s in his county when he started this program, and now they're in the 20s to 30s. And what he's seen is that a lot of the people who are in that percentage of the 20 to 30 have serious mental illness, and so they're actually building a new facility that should be open in about 6 months. And so we're talking to him about the link between unresolved trauma and substance use disorder and incarceration and mental illness, and how we might be able to assist if MDMA-assisted therapy is approved.
Wow, it's really fun to imagine what the possibilities might be as this starts to take off.
Yeah.
So we've been talking a bit about kind of how this is all related to trauma. And I was wondering if you would talk a little bit more about your proposed trauma healing program for people affected by the carceral system.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit more about your vision for this program?
Definitely. So in 2016, when I started here, the week before my first term at the UO, I participated in a program, a week-long retreat called Leadership. I actually think it was the first year they had it as the Institute. It was through the Holden Center here on campus. And one of the activities that we did was to identify a vision based on our core values. And mine was to create a trauma healing program or contribute to an existing one. And in 2019, I think my senior year, I did the Inside Out Prison Education Program, and I narrowed my goal down to be more specific to those affected by the carceral system, so carceral system being prisons and jails. And I would like it to be more broad, but it's like you gotta start somewhere. And the reason why I made that decision is 4 out of 4 of the males in my immediate family are currently or formerly incarcerated. And so it's a population that I'm really passionate about working with and providing healing to. And when I envision this program, I feel like it wouldn't just be people who are in prisons or jails or coming out of them, but also their family members. So having an incarcerated parent is an adverse childhood experience or an ACE. Also people who are victims of crimes and their family members, and then people who are working in these systems and institutions and their family members. There's just so much trauma in these communities, and I feel like it's a really good place to start. People who are incarcerated have way higher ACE scores than the general population. And so yeah, what I think is, if MDMA-assisted therapy is approved, then that could be one element, but I would like to have other options, because in our first phase 3 trial, 12% were non-responders, so it doesn't work for everyone. Not everybody's going to be eligible, not everybody's going to be interested. So working with other groups like Steve's CMHP or the Compassion Prison Project or the Enneagram Prison Project and other amazing groups that are out there doing this work, I think is also important.
Thank you for sharing more about that. Yeah, the possibilities seem like they might be endless, but starting with a particular focus definitely makes a lot of sense. And you had just mentioned the Enneagram Prison Project, and I know that your capstone research project for our program focused on that. Could you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah. So Enneagram Prison Project, or EPP, they are a 10-year-old nonprofit. We have the same birthday. This is coming up in April, so they're going to be 11. And they do programming inside of prisons and jails using the Enneagram, which is a personality tool for self-awareness. And they offer curriculum that's structured around 8 domains, like self-awareness, self-compassion, behavior towards others, tolerance and allowance of thoughts and feelings, support, self-care, appreciation of others. And it ties in not only the Enneagram, which is a tool to it's like if you have childhood wounding or childhood trauma, you have defense mechanisms that you use to survive. And the archetypes of those are based like in 9 structures. And so it helps you identify what those are. They have a focus on trauma-informed care. They have some modules on substance use disorder and brain functioning. And they offer Likert scale surveys for their program on your first day and then on your last day. And it's the same with a couple different qualitative questions. And so I did the quantitative analysis of those surveys to determine if the results were significant and meaningful. And I was pleased to find that they were. They were robustly significant, and there was a medium effect size, almost large. But I only did 102 of the surveys, so I am very curious to learn if we did a larger sample size, if the effect size might improve or what the p-value might do. So I'm going to continue working with them beyond the program to look at their data and see what they're doing. But yeah, I was really pleased, and it was an awesome experience, not only for me but for them, and it's been really fun.
That's wonderful. So you mentioned that you found significant effects. Could you maybe speak a little bit more about what some of those changes were and how that would translate into maybe improving the lives of the people who were in the project?
Yeah, so the highest ones, I believe, were tolerance and allowance of thoughts and feelings, self-compassion, and self-awareness. I'm pretty sure. And so the whole idea behind these domains is if people are aware of themselves and how they're behaving, they may be able to respond, using the prefrontal cortex instead of the amygdala. They may be able to engage in healthier behaviors and use their words or express their emotions as opposed to reacting with violence, which can create safer environments and also help build relationships and ultimately safer communities when these people return to society.
Thank you for elaborating a little bit more on that. And to go a little bit off script, just because you mentioned some different aspects of brain function, so amygdala related to emotion processing and prefrontal cortex, we think of that as being kind of I've heard it described as the air traffic controller of the brain, but really helps coordinate, goals, planning, and regulating behavior, among other things. So one of the things that kind of stands out for me, maybe as a connecting theme, and maybe to hear your thoughts on this, is one of the things that the psychedelic-assisted therapy is known for, and that also you can do through more behavioral and cognitive approaches, is that supporting neuroplasticity. I don't know if you might want to kind of reflect a little bit on that.
Yeah, definitely. That's what's also interesting about MDMA. So with PTSD, and adverse childhood experiences as well, the activity in the amygdala is overactive and the activity in the prefrontal cortex is dysregulated. And then MDMA is actually the opposite. It helps limit the activity in the amygdala and increase the activity in the prefrontal cortex. And so having this brain functioning, like you said, you can achieve it in other ways. But it's really exciting.
It is. It's exciting, and the connection to trauma-informed approaches. So the next question I have for you is, what is on the horizon for you? What are you looking forward to next?
Sleeping.
Good answer.
Working full-time, more than full-time, most of the time at MAPS, Rick Wrangling, they call it. and then doing the full-time grad program and having a 16-year-old stepdaughter has been a lot. But I'll take a little bit of downtime. I've already got some stuff lined up. I'm going to do the MAPS therapist training program so that I can learn how to administer MDMA-assisted therapy, assuming it's approved. And then I'm also trying to get into the Inside Out prison education program, into the training. So I participated in it as a student here, but I want to learn how to teach it. And I want to do a little bit of a different model. Currently, they have inside students who are people who are incarcerated, who are being educated so that they can return to society in a healthy way. And then also outside students who are students from universities. And they all take part in a class together. But I want to do it with inside students and then staff and correctional facilities and teach them about trauma. So when I did my class, I did conflict resolution, but they have, you know, all different kinds of themes for these classes. They have law and science and English, and I want to do trauma-informed practices and care so that the staff and the people who are living there get a chance to interact in a way that they normally wouldn't. That's one of the beauties of Inside Out, is there are people who would never talk to each other, but when you enter that classroom, there's a container that's set that sort of changes things. And so that's my next thing that I'm trying to achieve. We'll see if I can pull it off.
I have a feeling that you will.
And then also I took on 4 mentees. I got assigned them yesterday from Students for Sensible Drug Policy because I feel so grateful to SSDP and what they've done. So I'm really excited to see what these new students do.
That is exciting. So speaking of students, do you have any advice for current students or folks who are thinking about pursuing a master's degree or graduate education?
Yeah, so people thinking about it, I was so nervous, you know, I was emailing you like 10,000 times. Can I do informational interviews with people? I have PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, really difficult to live with. I have PTSD, I have anxiety, am I gonna be able to do this? So much self-doubt and so much fear, but I felt really supported thanks to you and your staff, and I pushed through, and now I'm almost done. So I would say for those thinking about it, you can do it, it's possible. And for those who are in it, I think the biggest thing is be engaged. So sometimes, as you know, I'm late on my assignments because I can do the assignment quickly and like not read all the materials and get a good enough answer in, but I really want to learn the material so that I'm not shorting myself. So sometimes I'll take more time to make sure that I'm actually getting the material down. And I think that that's one of the most important things. Like, you're only going to be in school for a certain amount of time, and you really want to make sure that you're getting every little bit that you can out of it. And then office hours. Professors are allies, you know, utilizing the network. And even though it is not easy at all, it's totally worth it. And remembering that you're going to be done soon.
I know, it's wild for me to think that you are basically going to be done in like a month or so.
22 days.
Oh, you're counting down. Nice, I like that. Thank you so much for sharing more about all of your experiences and your plans, and just very impressive. I was already impressed by you, but I've learned some more today. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
Oh, I just want to say thank you. Thanks for making this program. I remember when I discovered it, another late night on the internet searching the UO website when I was thinking about grad school. And I was like, who made this program for me? It was everything that I wanted: science, education, and human services. And so it's really awesome, and I'm just super grateful for you and the faculty and everybody who made it possible. And yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you. You are exactly the kind of student that we had envisioned hoping would join our program. So it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much for speaking with me today.